Hi everyone, welcome to today's Let's Talk period, where we hold talks related to all things feminism, menstrual equity, and more. Hi everyone, my name is Monica Zhang. I'm a sophomore at UC Berkeley and I use she series pronouns. This is
Hi, my name is Mia Horn. I'm also a sophomore at Berkeley and I use she series pronouns.
So today we're hosting Audin Leung as our speaker. She is the political director and the co-founder of Free the Period California Coalition, and they're going to talk about their experience of initiating the coalition and situations of transgender individuals in the menstrual equity space. So thank you so much for joining us, Audin.
Thanks for having me.
Yay.
Yeah, hi, thank you for joining us. As the founder of the Free the Period Coalition, what inspired you to get involved with the menstrual equity space?
Well, like I said, so I'm a co-founder of Free the Period, actually. And from the beginning, I would say Free the Period has always been about, being a coalition and being a group of folks who are all activated to band together for menstrual equity. And I would say what got me inspired was that aspect of having this movement of people who are inspired to stand up for menstrual equity, because for a lot of people, when they first enter the menstrual equity space, so many people that I talk to say like, wow, I never considered that it could be a thing that we would have free menstrual products in bathrooms everywhere. But that totally makes sense. Menstrual products aren't too different from toilet paper and soap, just something that we need as a basic necessity in order for us to be able to operate in public spheres. And so for me, I would say that it was really other people being involved in it and passionate about it, and then bringing me into it. So at UC Davis, we had a chapter of Period, and Annie Wang was the president. So she's kind of been with me since the beginning on this. And we just started out, like you guys, as a policy team of our Period at UC Davis chapter. We were trying to get menstrual products on our campus, and after we, were just trying to do that on our campus, we got to the point where the student affairs director said, like, okay, we'll fund this, but only for a year. And we kept trying to push for her to say what she needed to see in order for this to be like a permanent budget item. And she wouldn't really tell us. And so eventually we said, okay, like, let's take this to the top. Let's make this something bigger. And so that's what launched sort of Free the Period as it is today. So from going from like just our campus policy team to a larger thing, that's where I think we started being a larger presence in the menstrual equity space.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to hear about your development and how it's constantly growing. How old is the coalition, and do you mind telling us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so Free the Period started in 2018 as the policy team when we had a pilot program at UC Davis. It was like a really intensive pilot program where we stocked 30 bathrooms on campus over the course of a year, and the goal was to dispel administrators' concerns about providing free menstrual products in bathrooms. And so for a year, we stocked those bathrooms and had like over 100 volunteers sign up to help out with our pilot program. And so volunteers would go in regularly and count how many products people used in the bathrooms on like a weekly, daily-ish basis. And so from that, we were able to get some really great data on what usage of menstrual products in bathrooms actually looks like. because I guess, you know, this is a very new and radical idea for some folks, like administrators specifically. And so we had that pilot program. Sorry. So wait, sorry. What was the question again?
Oh, it's like maybe just talk about the coalition a little bit more.
The coalition part? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
of
trying
course.
to, yeah, okay. I'm trying to be able to explain all of the different things that Free the Period does, which is really
Uh-huh.
hard because we do so many things at
Um,
once. Yeah,
yeah,
specifically
just
the coalition part,
or just
right
whatever
now.
you want to talk about this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
So,
We can
yeah,
add
I'm
this.
sort of trying to explain like the timeline of how we moved from a campus thing to political thing to, you know, the coalition.
Uh-huh.
Um, but specifically about the coalition. So we have a coalition development team, which is one of our teams within Free the Period, led by Rachel, who goes to UC Berkeley. She's really great. And the goal of the coalition is to activate like campus level initiatives to get menstrual products on their campuses or to promote the issue of menstrual equity on their campuses in whatever way, you know, that works for their community. So that could be getting menstrual products in bathrooms. It could also be getting it in basic needs centers. It could be getting it in like the health education programs, you know, having more education about menstrual products. So our goal of the coalition is to reach out to groups across California on college campuses that are already either engaged in the menstrual equity space or engaged in like the feminist space in some way, and give them like the resources and support that we have from doing our whole pilot program research and from reaching out to all of these different groups, and give them those resources and support and like kind of roadmap and guidance for how they can get menstrual products on their campus, or do, you know, menstrual equity advocacy on their campus. And just a note on kind of what inspired that, one of the things that we had found when we were first thinking of starting Free the Period was we were doing all of this research on what other programs, menstrual product pilot programs looked like, on other campuses. And we found that there were so many different campuses that had, you know, provided menstrual products for like a year in a pilot program, but that pilot program was like 3 years ago and then nothing came out of it, you know. And there were all these little individual efforts that were happening on campuses across the state, but they kind of die out. And so another like big part of why we wanted to have this goal of forming a coalition of these different groups across the state, was to unify this effort that was already happening and like amplify those efforts, so that hopefully it could be a little bit more permanent and long lasting, and also obviously like power in numbers, and by having that power in numbers we can do a better job, on the policy end of representing the needs of students on individual campuses on the statewide level.
Wow, that's so interesting. It sounds like the coalition is so many different things and really valuable things for the community. So, yeah, I guess just what has your experience been as a trans person in the menstrual equity space?
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to talk about this when I was talking with Vienya, and she was like, oh, what are some things that you can offer as a unique perspective, on periods? And so obviously, you know, me being a trans person in the menstrual equity space is something that I guess is rare, unfortunately. Um, and so I think there has been a really awesome push, like in the framework of reproductive justice, you know, moving from like just equity to justice, to think about reproductive rights or like reproductive justice, etc., and equity, etc., you know, like intersectionally. And so people try to acknowledge trans folks more. But I think what ends up happening a lot is that like they will say that and they will, you know, believe that. But I think in practice, because people aren't used to gendering people correctly, you know, like using different pronouns, um, and because the way we understand periods to be, like people just understand periods to be for women, then there doesn't end up being very many trans people at all in the reproductive justice and feminist spaces that I've been in. So for me as a trans person in the menstrual equity space and in feminist spaces in general, it always feels like a little bit uncomfortable because I know that on one hand, people like are accepting, but I always feel like I have to navigate like how to both you know, advocate for the rights of other trans folks, um, and like uplift that issue, because there's sort of like an obligation almost of like me being a trans person, I need to represent more trans people in the menstrual equity space so that more folks who are trans, you know, can come into it. So there's like that obligation to bring those people in and to represent them and raise the issue more. But then at the same time, I always have this like anxiety that I don't want to like make me being trans like a big deal, because I think there's sort of this idea that, you know, like trans folks are like super sensitive and too loud or whatever, you know, and I don't want to like make it a big issue or make anyone feel bad for misgendering me. Um, so it's always like a fun line to walk that I'm always a little bit like uncomfortable with. But I hope that like by me being here and by me trying to at least like remind folks in the educational material that I promote, that there are, you know, trans people who menstruate and that they are always, you know, disproportionately impacted by any equity issue, specifically like in menstruation, you know, trans folks are going to be disproportionately not able to access the products and like be able to afford them, but then also like not be able to go into a woman's bathroom, you know, if they don't identify as a woman, they can't go and access those products. So I think it's just something we can all be more mindful about, and hopefully like for cisgender people, think more about being like active ally, and like promoting that even though um, they themselves aren't trans, because it's kind of like hard on me and other trans folks who are like such a small percentage of the population to always feel like we need to like explain ourselves in the space and um, yeah, just exist sometimes.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I totally agree that nowadays there are still so many prejudice and bias hold against transgender individuals, and that is very unfortunate. And there's definitely more things could be done to restore reproductive justice, menstrual equity, justice back to them, and that's something both I think the coalition and our club can look into and change the situation for sure. Yeah, so let's move on to the next part where we want to ask you about your experience lobbying for menstrual equity legislation and what is that like?
What's it like? Well, first I'll talk about what the experience was. So, um, I said earlier how we had started as just a campus initiative, and then we decided to go for a statewide level initiative. And so I think it was one of our first things that we started on as a statewide group was our lobbying campaign this past legislative session. So like in December 2019 to February of this year, I want to say, we were trying to get a bill passed that would require menstrual products to be provided in all K-12, college, and university bathrooms. So basically, you know, all school bathrooms, because it should be considered something that's a basic hygiene need, equal to toilet paper and soap. So we got a lot of like support from legislators. Whenever we met with them, they would be supportive, but it was really hard for us to find someone to want to like introduce the bill themselves, which was unfortunate. And I think that you know, me like on the Free the Period team, all of us were like STEM majors on the Free the Period team at the time, and I was probably one of the folks who were like more, I guess, politically knowledgeable. Um, it was quite, you know, intimidating to go into this whole effort, like being the one leading it when I hadn't had a ton of previous experience lobbying before. You know, like I had gone to a couple lobby meetings before, but not to the level that I was doing it this past session. So it looked um, like what it looked, this experience looked like was like every week I would be in the Capitol, like just trying to knock on as many legislators' doors as possible and like get meetings with their staffers and you know, pitch our bill to them. Um, and then also like get other students to come with me and you know, like coach them on what they should say during the meeting, and write up like materials to be presented in the meeting, one pagers and stuff like that.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that sounds like quite the process. What do you think is one of the biggest, sorry, okay. I didn't transition that very well. Okay, so just a different slightly related question. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges that our generation faces when it comes to attaining menstrual equity? And it's kind of like a broad question, so any insight you have.
Yeah. Hmm.
Or I guess what problems you faced when you were doing all kinds of this lobbying work, um, coalition project, or what kind of problems you have faced that could be improved.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to think specifically on our generation because I think I could speak to, you know, different marginalized populations, like, you know, people with disabilities or, you know, people who are low income, people who are houseless. Like, there's all these different populations that face particular barriers. I don't know if you would want me to talk about any specific um, group. Okay, I think maybe one way to talk about it is if you're asking about our generation. I would say that things are looking a bit up for our generation because menstrual equity was not really something that was on the radar like before 10, you know, like 15 years ago. And so now there's all of these youth who are pushing the issue of menstrual equity and like really leading the menstrual equity movement. Um, and so I think I think there's a lot more support for our generation, um, like doing activism nowadays than before and talking about periods um, than before because we have all of these concurrent, you know, like movements that are going on, like BLM and Me Too and, you know, the reproductive justice movement, etc. So things are, I guess, looking a bit better for our generation in terms of attaining menstrual equity. And that's really exciting because we're always thinking about the barriers. But I guess if we were to zoom out and look at sort of the trajectory, things are a bit better, at least in terms of what the stigma around it is, though, like, obviously there's still so much to do and so many people are still stuck in the same problems that we have been.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's definitely one of the biggest challenges we are facing right now. Um, yeah, so that's all we prepared for today. And thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you want to add on and talk about more?
No.
Okay, then we'll do our conclusion very casually. So, um, thanks for sharing your thoughts about menstrual equity and how it is like to be a transgender individual in the menstrual equity space with us today. And just, um, oh my God. Thanks again for joining us. And I really hope that you enjoyed recording the podcast with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and for all the great questions.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Very insightful.
Thanks. Bye.